Everybody, I'm Mark Zinni. Thank you so much for joining us live right now on the Channel 3 Facebook page. All week long, every day this week, we have been answering your coronavirus vaccine questions by taking those questions directly to local doctors. Remember, you can always submit your questions still right now. It's not too late. You can go to the Channel 3 app and send it our way that way. You can also comment below this posting right now, and I will be monitoring it throughout the next half hour. Or you can also call us at 860-244-1790. No question is too silly. If you're thinking about something, just pass it along, and we'll certainly see if we can get you an answer. Our expert tonight is Dr. Henry Anyimadu, an infectious disease specialist at the Hospital of Central Connecticut. Doctor, thank you very much for joining us. I know you've been with us a lot lately the past several months. We appreciate you taking time again tonight.
You're very welcome. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Well, I know you've been very busy, so just so folks can maybe learn a little bit about you first, Doctor, talk with us about what you do and, really what you have seen firsthand over the past several months.
Well, yeah, I'm an infectious diseases specialist over at the Hospital of Central Connecticut and at Mid-State Medical Center. So I work with right on the front line, seeing COVID-19 patients every day. And over the last, how many months now, 11 months, it's been horrifying. We've seen patients that are young patients, in their 20s, die from COVID-19. We've seen elderly patients too die from COVID-19. This is a pandemic that's affecting everyone, and it's been really challenging. But thankfully, there's light at the end of the tunnel now. We do have vaccines, and I'm sure we'll talk about them.
Without a doubt. When you look back over the past year, it's hard to not be personally impacted by what happened. Obviously you're right there, so you're seeing patients, but, personally, did you experience any COVID-related issues in your family or even yourself?
God being so good, I've been fine. It's been a very horrifying months. My brother had COVID-19. My brother-in-law had COVID-19. It was a really challenging period, but thankfully I've been fine. And my family, my wife, my children have all been fine. And we're just thankful.
Yeah. That is very, very good to hear. And I'm assuming at this point, I believe, I think we covered it when it happened, but you've been vaccinated, correct?
That's right. Yes, I've been vaccinated, and I'm excited that I got the vaccine. It's such a relief. It almost feels like a miracle.
It's interesting you say that, because I've talked to a lot of people, including like my mother, who said the minute she had that shot, she just felt like a new person. Obviously, there's a ways to go, and we'll talk more about why you don't want to let your guard down. But I would imagine, at least mentally, you felt really good after you got it.
That's right. That's right. So at least that once you've been vaccinated, even with the new variants and all that's going on, the virus is changing, but at least that you won't die from COVID-19, and that you won't be hospitalized for COVID-19. And that's such a relief. That's such a relief.
A lot of folks have asked all week long about the differences in the shots. So obviously we have the Pfizer, we have the Moderna. Soon we'll have these Johnson & Johnson shots. I'm assuming they'll be cleared at some point relatively soon. Does it matter which one people take?
So between Moderna and Pfizer, it doesn't really matter which one you take. It's all a messenger RNA vaccine. And these vaccines are almost similar or identical to each other. It's a small protein or a small genetic material that's being put into your body, instructing your body to make antibodies. So your body will make proteins that look like the spike proteins on the virus. And then once your body sees those spike proteins, it makes antibodies to those spike proteins. So you get T cell responses and you get B cell responses as well. So those will stay in your body, and when you actually get exposed to the real virus, they'll be ready to fight the virus.
That is a big relief for a lot of people. Now, the Johnson & Johnson shot is a little different, right? So that's one shot, one and done?
That's right. So yes, going back to the last question again, the Pfizer vaccine, the only difference between them is that it's two shots, 21 days apart for the Pfizer, and for the Moderna is two shots, 28 days apart. So it's just differences in the timing. Otherwise, both of them are messenger RNA vaccines, and they do very well. Yes, the Johnson & Johnson is just one shot, and we are looking forward to having that approved by, or at least an emergency use authorization by the FDA on February 26th. So that's the date that all of us are waiting for.
Yeah, at that point, then they can roll those out right away, I would imagine. Should people, if some folks think that the Pfizer one works better, or maybe the Moderna one, should people say, you know what, I don't want the Johnson & Johnson one, I want to get the Pfizer one, or is this a matter of everybody just needs to get whatever shot that they can?
I think at this point, there is no reason to be selective. All the vaccines that we have approved or that received the FDA emergency use authorization are great. And they all have efficacy that's above 90%. For the Pfizer, 94, both of them, 94, 95% efficacy. We've never seen anything like that in history. So either one is great. There is no reason at all to be selective here. And even the Johnson & Johnson one, it's not a messenger RNA vaccine, but it is an adenovirus vectored vaccine that's also great. It has, so this vaccine, the Johnson & Johnson was tested globally, worldwide, and overall it prevented severe disease and hospitalizations by 85%, which is pretty significant.
For sure.
And the way I look at these vaccines, the first thing you think of is death. The next thing is hospitalization or severe disease. And if anything is going to prevent any of these, it's a go. You should definitely get it. And all of these vaccines will definitely do that.
Well, that is very, very good to hear. Now, as I said, we have a lot of questions, and a lot of them are coming in right now on Facebook. So I just want to ask folks, be patient. I'll try and get to as many as I can, but I'll start here with Nicole from Manchester. She is saying she is 17 years old. I have a 24-year-old brother. Our question together is, when would we get the vaccine for people our age?
Nicole, that's a very good question. And I'll say that I'm really excited that a 17-year-old and a 24-year-old are looking forward to getting the vaccine. That's very impressive. And I think everyone listening out there should be considering getting it. Unfortunately, at this point, it's not, we are going in phases, right? And we are not there yet to vaccinate people that are 17-year-olds and within that age range. The good thing is, at least for the Pfizer vaccine, being 17, because they studied people that were older than 16 years. So 17, you did make the mark, and you will be able to get a vaccine when it gets to your 10. I'm thinking that it would be somewhere in the summer from the way things are going, but we are hoping that it could be sooner.
I saw the president today came out and said it looks like 300 million or something like that, potentially by July or August. So that would be good news. And there's, as you have, I'm sure, heard some talk this week that maybe even within the next month or so, folks could be signing up who maybe didn't expect it, but they don't want to make everybody too excited just yet, right?
That's right. That's right. So there's a lot of vaccines that are coming out, and especially with the Johnson & Johnson being approved. Well, it hasn't been approved yet, but we are hoping the EUA will go through, and by February 26th, it will be available. And the good thing with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is that it can be kept at a normal refrigeration temperature of 2 to 8 degrees. So wherever you are, you can get it. In small clinics, in small pharmacies, it will be widely available, and that's the hope.
Yeah, for sure. I know that they were talking about that from the beginning. If they can make it easier to get to like a CVS or Walgreens, then that makes it easier to get in your arm.
That's right. That's right. And that's the goal, especially with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine that can be kept at normal refrigeration temperatures.
Now, Terry from Griswold, or Oxford, I should say, is asking a good question because there's so much talk about these new variants. How protected are we from the new variants when we receive these vaccines?
That's right. So the new variants are a concern. We know of the B117, that's the UK variant, and we know of the B1351, that's the South African variant. So both Pfizer and Moderna did neutralizing antibody studies. They took people that got the vaccine, took their blood, and measured neutralizing titers to some of these variants, right? And what they found was that for the Pfizer, the press release said that there was some bit of a decrease in the neutralizing titers, but they were confident about the fact that even at that level of those neutralizing antibody titer, it was still protective against all the variants that have been seen so far. Moderna did the same thing, and they said that for the South African variant, the protection is decreased by about the neutralizing titer is decreased by about sixfold. But even in spite of that decrease, it's still high enough to protect you from having severe disease. So the variants are a concern, but at this point, you are still very protected. You are almost close to being protected from severe disease. And we know that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine was actually done in the center of South Africa, where 90% of the variants that were circulating there was the South African variant. That's the B1351. So even amongst that population, nobody died, nobody had severe disease, nobody was hospitalized among those who got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. And I think in the midst of a variant that's more transmissible, it's very impressive.
And I was just going to ask you, so explain the difference if you could. Because I think, myself included, there's misunderstanding about whether it's more deadly or it's just easily transmissible, maybe more so. I read something that talked about how, now they say if you're near someone for 15 minutes or 20 minutes with the old variant, but with the new one, it could be just a few minutes and you could potentially get the disease.
That's right. So it is, from what we know so far, and today is what, February 12th.
Yeah.
From what we know so far, the new variants are more transmissible. So then it can quickly transmit amongst people. Let's say if all of you are in a room, it will take a lesser time for it to get to you, and you can quickly get infected with it. We don't fully understand why that is, but some experts believe that the new variant binds very solidly to the receptors, the human ACE receptors, ACE2 receptors that the virus binds to. So because it has a very high affinity for those receptors, it can, even if you get a small dose, it binds so robustly that you get an infection. That's what we know so far. We just know that it's more transmissible. We don't know if it causes more severe disease. That's still yet to be determined.
Okay. Now, Nicole is asking on Facebook, she's saying, I'm 50 and wants a shot. I'm in remission from cancer and wants to be vaccinated. And I don't know if you necessarily know this, but I think that potentially some folks with pre-existing conditions may be in the next group or coming up pretty soon.
That's right. You're right. So currently we are in phase 1B,
Okay.
and we are extending it to the folks that are older than 65 years. And I think the next step is those that have, actually the next step is frontline essential workers. The frontline essential workers is yet to be defined, who is essential workers. And I think within that group, they will tie in those that have pre-existing conditions. So your time is coming, and coming pretty soon.
That's good news. David in Bolton is asking, how do you know if you're eligible for the vaccine because of comorbidities? Who determines what those even are? But I'm imagining that, like you just said, is something they're working out right now.
That's right. And the CDC has some sort of guidance as to what kind of comorbidities will put you at risk of severe disease. And that's the whole reason for all these phasing. They are looking at people that when they get COVID-19 will have a very, can progress quickly to severe disease. And that's why we have all these categories. So there are patients who have COPD, patients who have hypertension, diabetes, patients who have other chronic kidney diseases, and several other comorbids. So the CDC has it clearly defined who will get the vaccine next based on those comorbids.
Okay. Cheryl in Shelton is asking, are the shots safe for an 85-year-old with diabetes and kidney disease? You probably get a lot of these questions for folks who have, all kinds of health conditions. I know we have others posting online about heart conditions and things, right?
That's right. So the vaccines are safe in that group. And the good news is in the clinical trials, both Pfizer and the Moderna clinical trials, there were over 21% of the patients or the people that were studied who had underlying comorbidities, right? And there were about 35% of people in the Pfizer group who had obesity. So we know for sure that even in that group and in those that are older than 85, the vaccine still works in that group.
That is good news. This is interesting. I hadn't thought about this. Barbara from Westbrook, is the second dose the same as the first dose? Like, is it the same amount, or is there a difference in any way?
It is the same dose. So it's the same dose. It's the same dose that you get for the first one and the same dose that you get for the second shot.
Why not then just give everyone the full dose in one shot? Is that not an option, obviously?
So the reason why you get an initial dose and get a second dose is that the initial dose is called a primer dose. So it sort of sets your immune system ready and induces some bit of immunity. Your T cells, your antibodies are beginning to produce, are starting to be produced. And then the second shot is more of a booster dose to boost up your level of immunity. So that's why they studied patients in that kind of two categories where you get it once and then you get a booster dose. So there's a primer and then a booster dose. So the booster dose sort of ramps up your immunity and shoots your antibodies high enough to protect you.
Okay. Well, Cheryl is asking online right here, are there any preservatives in the vaccines? My doctor recommends that I wait due to my many allergies.
That's right. There are preservatives in the vaccine, and thanks to the drug makers, the Pfizer and Moderna, they've made it publicly available. So one of the preservatives that's been a concern is polyethylene glycol or polysorbates, right? Polysorbates are commonly used in cosmetics, in soaps, in multiple other cosmetics. And one of the classic medication that has polyethylene glycol is Merilax, a cathartic that we use, or people that are constipated will take and get loose bowels. So if you know for sure that you are allergic to any of the polysorbates or polyethylene glycol, to be specific, the CDC clearly says that you should not get the vaccine and you should speak to an allergist or an immunologist before you get the vaccine. So if you know for sure that you're allergic to any of these constituents or preservatives, then you should speak to someone or an allergist before you get the vaccine. That said, if you are allergic to food, if you have some food allergies, animal venom, anything else, or any other medications, the only recommendation at this point is that you can still go ahead and get the vaccine. However, you would be monitored for about 30 minutes before you leave the vaccination center. And the CDC also clearly says that if you've had an immediate allergic reaction to any injectables or to any medications at all, you would want to talk to your clinician before you get the vaccine. And again, you can still go ahead and get the vaccine, but you would have to be monitored for about 30 minutes. So having just general allergies is not a contraindication to getting the vaccine. But if you've had any immediate or anaphylactic reaction to any vaccine, then it's you would have to be given in a monitored setting, or an allergist will have to be involved.
Rosemary, kind of on that theme right there, is asking on Facebook, I had the flu shot and I had no reaction. So do you think I'll have a reaction with this shot?
If you had the flu shot and you were fine, as I said earlier on, if you haven't had any anaphylactic reaction to any injections or to any vaccines, you should be fine. You should be completely fine with the vaccine. But if you have had an anaphylactic reaction to even a flu shot, we should keep in mind that these vaccines are completely different. But unfortunately, those who had anaphylactic reactions from the vaccines, the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines, are people who had some form of prior allergic reactions. And that's why it's become an issue. And so far, it's about 2.8 to 5 per a million doses of the vaccine that has been given. So it's a small fragment of people, but it's still significant. So that's why it's important to bring these things up if you are allergic to any medications, or specifically if you've had an immediate allergic reaction or an anaphylactic reaction. Those are very important. It's very important that you bring those things up.
Yeah, that's good to know. It's interesting, too, because you do hear, doctor, from people who say many times it's after the second shot when they actually have a more severe response, right?
That is true to a larger extent. So in both the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine, those who had not necessarily allergic reactions, but those who had an adverse reaction or side effects, which I think this is a very good time to talk about those side effects.
Yes,
it's
please.
mainly headache, myalgia, and fatigue. Those were the major ones. Occasionally, people will have fever and chills. And one thing that cut across was local injection site reaction, right? And people will have pain at the site. And that sort of ran through about 80 to 90% of people who got the vaccine will have some mild pain at the site of the injection. But it's not everyone who gets those fever, fatigue, myalgias. But if you do get those, it's also most of the people got that. It resolved within 2 to 3 days. And if it doesn't resolve after that time, you definitely want to get tested for COVID, not because the vaccine will give you COVID, but those symptoms are very similar to COVID. And at this point in the pandemic, you could have been exposed before getting the vaccine, right? So if you have any of those symptoms, you definitely want to get tested.
That's an interesting point you mentioned right there about the shot not giving you COVID, because you do see that. I see it here online. People say they won't get it because it's going to give me COVID, and that is false, correct?
That is completely false. And I think I talked about what a vaccine is initially. It's for the messenger RNA vaccines, it's just a small instruction that is put into a lipid nanoparticle that is injected to you. So you get a small messenger RNA, it gets into your body. At that site, everything goes to the local lymph nodes that you have in your armpit or your axilla. And then that gets translated into the spike protein. And once that translation happens, that initial instruction or code that was given to you gets its protein, so it gets denatured. But then you develop the proteins, the spike protein, you produce the spike proteins so that your body identifies the spike proteins and then it induces immunity, right? So we shouldn't really be worried at all about what we are getting. Nobody is giving you COVID, the virus itself.
Right, that is not happening.
I think we have to make that clear.
Yeah. Now, Mark from Broadbrook, this is actually a very interesting question. He's saying his second Moderna vaccine keeps getting canceled. I'm now 45 days out, and if this scheduled vaccine appointment I have does not get canceled, it's going to be obviously several days delayed from when I was supposed to. Is there an issue with that? Should I have to get revaccinated all over again?
So the simple answer to that question is that there is no third dose for this vaccine, at least for now. Initially, the CDC insisted that everyone has to follow the exact regimen. So if you are getting the Pfizer, it's day 1 and then day 21. If you're getting the Moderna, it's day 1 and then day 28, right? But they relaxed that regimen a little bit, and now you can go up to 6 weeks. That's about 42 days.
Okay.
Right? 45 days is a little out of the window, but there's still no reason to get a third shot. You can still get your vaccine.
Do you see us, doctor, getting these shots every year from here on out, just like the flu?
It's difficult to say at this point, but we may get there, especially because we're seeing a lot more variants popping out around the world. And this is viruses. They mutate all the time. So with mutations, we may need to tweak or retool the vaccine and give a booster dose. But at this point, I can't say for sure that we'll be getting it every year.
Okay. Well, before we let you go, I do want to ask you, because I know you are participating in a forum with the New Britain NAACP about the importance of the Black community getting the shot. We have done a lot of stories on some hesitancy in certain communities to get the vaccine. When is this happening? Is this something that people can participate in as well?
That's right. It's coming up. The date is not set yet. But we are looking forward to it, and it will be publicized. I think we have a tentative date for next Thursday.
Well, I will make sure that we share it. I'll make sure that we share it here on the air as well, because you've been very helpful with us. Doctor, this has been fascinating, and I just have to say before we go, we appreciate here at Channel 3, and everyone is commenting online. People have been calling you amazing and just saying how you have really helped answer a lot of questions. And I know you're on the front line of this, and you have been for a long, long time now, and you probably never expected to get to this point. But your information is incredible, and you help keep everybody calm, which I think is where we all need to be right now, right?
Thank you very much. I'll be happy to answer more questions at any time.
Well, we will have you back, Dr. Henry Anyimadu. Thank you very much, sir. We will see you again right here on Channel 3 very soon, and we thank everybody for joining us here on the Channel 3 Facebook page.